Okay, we should be live. Good evening, chat. Hope everyone's well. Let us know if you can hear us and see my screen at least. And also, Duck, if you want to say something to make sure our audio is good to go, that'd be nice.
Hey guys.
There you go. 2 words. That's your sample size.
That's as much as you get from me.
yeah. It's one of those Fridays.
Oh, dude, I'm super tired, but it's all right.
We'll make it.
Yeah.
Looks like people can hear us, I think. Chat, yes, we're live, says Flowery. I always get that name wrong. I always think Ray, Florida. Does that mean I'm dyslexic? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Flurry Roider.
Yeah. Okay, apparently we're live and good to go. Fantastic. We'll keep the intro brief because I know everyone gets annoyed by that. Like the video. That's it. Like the video. And also thank you to Bybit for sponsoring Technical Roundup, the YouTube channel, as well as the newsletter. We appreciate their support, and their links can be found in the description below. The first thing there, actually, is those links, which I'm sure you're all desperately hunting for. So, Frank actually asks a really good question. I wonder if there is ever a time Don is not tired. It's such a valid question, isn't it?
That is a valid question.
You've been
It's
shaky
been a
for the
long
last,
time.
6 months, mate.
Yeah, it's fucking like whenever there's something like COVID around, right? And I don't get out or get to do a lot of sports or something, I don't know. I just get tired all day. But then again, I haven't been really there health-wise for the last age. I mean, it's been this year pretty much, ever since February. It's been shit.
Yeah, my memory of this year ended in February. Yeah. And then that's it. Kind of first lockdown, and then there's kind of no breaks on that train since then. Sam asks, "What sports do you like, Duck?" These are good questions. See, this is what Casual Fridays for. What sports do you like, Duck?
I like climbing, like any kind of climbing, really, like outdoor, indoor, bouldering, leads, anything really.
The ladder on League of Legends.
That also. But I do like surfing, all that kind of stuff, like surfing, climbing. I've done kite surfing in the past, but don't really have time for that anymore. And I mean, yeah, there's a bunch.
So you're like
really.
an active adventure boy, nature holiday type on your bullshit.
Yeah, when I'm allowed to go, but
when the world isn't closed down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the year started off really well. Like January, I was in Morocco surfing, and then February, I was in Finland in minus 20 degrees. I don't know what that is in American, but
it's okay. No one cares. Celsius just makes sense.
Yeah, minus 20, minus 30. So that was super, super cold, really cool.
And then that's it.
Yeah, and then
the start of the year was one of those high time frame bearish retests where it looks really good really early on, and then it just nukes, and you realize as soon as it goes below the candle open, you're like, oh, that was the wick. Okay, now the real kind of trend starts, right? It's what it feels like at the start of this year. It's it was kind of the same for me. Celebrating some stuff, seeing friends, traveled with family, and then once the wick was put in, the sell pressure has been relentless. And I generally feel like, as a world, I guess we had a chance to put a decent lid on it into winter. Certainly, Europe has done terribly, America has done terribly, and all that type of stuff. But I feel like we had a chance to put a lid on it going into winter, because we know that so many symptoms are basically interchangeable with the flu, and then hospital capacity is already stretched just as a result of that season, aging population, all that type of stuff. And I feel like we've just kind of missed that boat. So I don't really know what the next couple of quarters are going to look like. So
they're going to be shit. I can already tell they're going to be shit. But it's fine. Sometimes you need that bullish retest, right? Bullish retest on life.
Yeah, civilizational extinction, broken resistance turn to support. Yeah, and then retest the industrial revolution as FTA or something. I don't know, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope we haven't been rug pulled, man.
Yeah, devs exit scamming. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be that. I'd much rather have it be like a retrace,
Old Testament style, just let's just restart. It's the same dev, new Ponzi.
I mean, there's good reason for that, right? I wouldn't put it past God to kind of pull the rug.
Oh, well, we've certainly done plenty to deserve it. Speaking of markets, I think it's, I was going to name this something like a monthly close party or something, but I realized there are 31 days in October and the whole Halloween thing. So I was like, oh, okay, can't do that. So I just chose a boring title. But I'm just flipping over to my kind of chart screen now on the monthly time frame. And like in terms of like pure TA, like the monthly time frame has been good, right? There were no closes below 10.7, which is a really good level. It squeezed you both ways, right? The high after the highest traded price after the close above it was like 12.5, and then the lowest price of the retest was like 9.8. So you've got a crazy range while nothing's really happening, and we droned on about it in the newsletter every week, right? Where we were like, look, we had this 10.7 move, but there's been no move from the level yet. Like, nothing's really played out on the high time frame. But now we finally reached this kind of highest close level and actually tapped it perfectly on most exchanges at 13.8. And interestingly, Coinbase, which I think was leading a lot of the run up into the level, and it was just spot dominant generally, kind of went offline, I think, pretty much at the top of that rally. And then when it came back on and derivatives were selling, etc., and we're kind of floating around that level now. Just my kind of gut feeling, less technical sort of stuff. Like, yes, purely technical analysis. We we hit the level, so like resistance was tested, etc. But I've seen very few high time frame reversals, which are just so chilled, I guess. Non-blow off toppy, not extreme, don't violate the level whatsoever. And in this case, if we start pulling back significantly from that high at 39, that means we've got like a high time frame double top, like perfect to the dollar, right? It'd be the 2019 swing and now this swing. Now, I don't know. I'm finding that like generally quite uncomfortable. I'm not sure how much I can envisage just leaving those highs in and then just kind of, okay, well, that's the retest of resistance done, down we go. I don't know. I'm finding it hard to come to terms with that. What I think is quite likely, or at least reasonable to entertain. And look, maybe I'm completely biased and full of shit here because I made a video on the channel saying, is 14k resistance? Arguing that it is, obviously, but like we're probably going to wick through it like we wick through all high time frame levels, right? So the fact that we haven't done that would be the exception to the rule for the most part. So I think it's less likely. But look, I've just drawn like a straight horizontal from that 13.9 level. What I could see happening is a monthly close not far from where we are now, right? Like within 13.3, 13.5, 13.6, whatever, just like within the intraday ranges we're at now. And then next month to look something like this, whereby we have, the monthly close like at the level or under the level or near the level, whatever, like close to 13.8, 13.9. And then the next monthly to start off and actually push above it a fair bit. And have a lot of, breakout trade opportunities and whatever, positioning above previous month's high to make it look like obvious continuation. And then and only then would I be comfortable positioning, and also from a spot rebalancing point of view, expecting some sort of move lower and back within the range. I think if you're going to argue for a pullback, probably in my mind at least, it's less likely to happen just in such unspectacular fashion, where you kind of leave the same high in and the market just vanishes and drops and disappears. I still think if this high time frame resistance is going to do its job, just like high time frame support gets wicked and it's not perfect, but the candle closes end up being decent guides, I think we'll see something similar for this monthly time frame. Could be wrong completely. Maybe this is going to just be one of those hilarious double tops which just look perfect and we just float lower and die. Who knows? But I'm certainly open-minded towards still selling a breakout into 14k and seeing what happens then. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's
and
fair.
You can share your screen if you want to make any points as well. I'll just flip over. If you've got any points to make.
I don't think I have any.
Okay, yeah, but that's kind of my monthly, right? And also one thing that no one's I don't want to use terms like no one's talking about this because you know how bullshit that is. But generally the perspective, which doesn't seem to be terribly popular, is some sort of monthly range, right? Like we moved from 10.7 to 14k. Why wouldn't we? Is it that unreasonable to argue some sort of range between monthly levels at that point? So like 14k is generally towards the top. 10.7 generally towards the bottom / support, and then stuff going on in the interim, and lower time frame trends in between, but not kind of either 20k or 0 within the next monthly candle. I think there's a non-trivial chance that things kind of slow down a little bit around these areas. Is that something you disagree with?
No, not really. I think it's fair to think about it that way. In general, we're kind of at the cusp of a breakout,
Yeah.
right? And then you have a lot of people positioning for the breakout, and I mean, I could see it chop and just fuck everyone over, like be it longs or shorts. I could see it chop here, yeah. For me, it's just like Bitcoin's at this kind of price point where it's really hard to
Yeah.
kind of guess where it's gonna go because one, you're really close to a breakout. So if you're shorting, right, that's the best place to do it because it's pretty much the last resistance that you're gonna be able to short. So if you short that, it's pretty much one of the last chances you get.
Yeah.
But also, like, if you short it and you're wrong, I mean, who knows where this is gonna stop, right? So for me, it's really difficult to kind of put, like, I don't know exactly what Bitcoin's gonna do, so I just focus on ETH. But yeah, I think it's fair to say like 14K strong resistance. If you kind of wick above it, sell off back below it, I think it's probably gonna get like a decent sized pullback. So pretty much agree with you there.
Yeah. I just feel, I don't know, there's like looming discomfort from the market leaving in that double those highs and just tapping it and then just kind of floating back. It just doesn't seem, I don't know, it's not how I'd envisage the end of a rally like this. There's nothing at the moment suggesting that it's the end of the rally either.
I mean, for me, it was kind of. I wouldn't have been surprised if that kind of happens, but
Yeah.
it would have had to have followed through in the last few days.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the daily chart now, right? We had that engulfing on the daily and we've kind of floated back. And that's not
Yeah,
necessarily like, oh, that's it, the engulfing is invalidated. A lot, quite recently, actually, I'm sure you've seen this pattern. Certainly on the squeezes up, on the lower time frames, you'd have like a really engulfing bearish looking candle and then it just get completely swallowed up, right?
yeah. I mean, it's kind of what Bitcoin's been doing the entire rally, pretty much.
Yeah.
Puts in like a good sized 5, 10, 15, 20% candle, and then it starts walking back up, right? And I mean, if you look at the chart, you can even see that in how it's moving, like in the recent one, like even on the daily where you're looking right now.
Yeah.
If you look at the last 8 to 9 candles, it's just like if you throw a diagonal straight through them all,
Yeah.
you can kind of see like how it's just walking up slowly. And I mean, that's what Bitcoin's been doing the entire rally. If it wanted to break down, like if it wanted to kind of do the shift from bullish walk up to bearish kind of breakdown, I think it should have done so like at least today. Like there was a chance where it could have broken down, it didn't.
Yeah.
So for me, like I was short from pretty much the high, watched it break down, was like, oh nice, caught it, and then watched it slowly creep up, and I was like, okay, I've seen that movie before. so I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like I don't want to be positioned in that kind of environment, even more so given that, like you said, if it rates 13.8, 9 into the 14Ks, I think there's a good chance it gets smacked down.
Yeah.
So there might be better possibilities up there, I think.
Yeah, and it's also just like if you look at the daily chart, just forgetting structure levels, etc. That was really the first big red daily candle that we've had in a while, right? Like, you have to look all the way back to like the end of September when we were like chopping around whatever under 11K to get the last big red daily sell-off, right? Everything else is just like tiny red candles and consolidations or nothing else. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a lot of offside or ultimately offside participation in that one daily sell-off, with obviously a stop above above that candle because everyone snipes the top and you just put your stop at the swing high. That's sarcasm. And then a push into there and then the actual price action that I want to see at resistance. So I mean, purely probabilistically for me, I still at the moment, in the absence of losing support at like 13K, I think retesting the highs is more likely than completely rolling over. But the and let me just put that level up so for the audience as well. It's the one we talked about a couple times. The daily level going all the way back to this consolidation here. The highest close, but it comes out at 12.9, right? So that's been acting as support. As long as that's intact, I'm going to expect some sort of, in this case, retest, but also, as per the video, extension into the monthly level, because these monthly levels very seldom work perfectly. And then we can have a conversation about where do we go from there, the high time frame wick and the range, etc. But I'm not totally convinced that this is it, right? But I mean, the one argument against that is the ETH floating death maybe dragging everything down. Do you want to screen share us your Ethereum views?
Yeah, I can.
And we'll get back to your questions as well. Thank you for all those.
So should work, I think.
Yep, all good.
So yeah, Bitcoin. Quickly, I'll go over Bitcoin real quick because like last stream I said, if you want to short this diagonal, right? When we were chilling down here, it pumped into diagonal, rejected, and that was where I would have wanted to see it break down, right? Got like nice action.
Make a lower low, right? Was that what
yeah, exactly. And we got some nice like action into the consolidation in here that got bought up pretty much entirely, even though the traditional markets weren't doing so great back then. So you just had buyers come in, and whenever you see that, I mean, for me, that's not the things that I want to see. So I moved out of ETH as well, but I'll talk about ETH now because I think that's the more interesting one. So for me, ETH in general, what we're doing right now is we're bearishly retesting a monthly level, right? And I positioned early for ETH around 407, like above this level. Something I like to do whenever you have a monthly level, whatever, you see price like trade above it, but you're pretty sure that it's going to close below it. I just look for an early entry. That's what I did, and it moved down. But now that we're actually heading into the monthly close, which is going to be in roughly a day, I don't mind being out of the position to see, okay, are we actually going to close below the level? Are we going to close above it? What's going to happen? And for me, that's just, I'm not entirely sure. I could see it go all the way back to the level, right?
Yeah.
That'd be 390. That'd be my preferred option, because then what often happens is you actually put in a wick above the level 2. So, I mean, maybe that it puts in a rally, right? Takes out this last month's high, or like trades anywhere above there. And then that's a better entry than the one that I already had. So it's one of the reasons why I closed ETH. But yeah, I still think this is, I mean, as it stands right now, that's a bearish retest. And whenever I have this setup, I like to play, I mean, these kind of setups are one of my favorites because one, you can easily kind of see if you want to use the trusty old risk reward tool, where your risk is, right? You really don't want to see it trade and maintain trading above the prior high, and then you can take it into the support level, right? And you have a decent risk reward setup. Looks pretty terrible right now, but if you look at like this, and I mean, you can refine it based on the small time frames, right? You get a decent trade, even more so, because you exactly know where you want to get out, right? And I like these kind of setups. And I mean, this is just the cautious side of things, right? Based on this setup. Because if you think about it, if this is a bearish retest, we trade into this level and actually fail to hold that level, we're back in the old range, right? So, I mean, if you're really, really bearish, you could play that kind of setup pretty far down. I wouldn't. For me, this is more than enough. And, but yeah, I mean, everyone can do whatever they want, right?
I tend to avoid hyperbole, right? Because I think your views have to be so malleable to some extent in trading that using a lot of hyperbole kind of contradicts that. But is this one of the worst like for me, I don't know if you agree, this is like one of the worst monthly closes on the chart, maybe ever, for like ETH in terms of context and how it looks right now. Maybe I'm just pulling stuff out of my ass, but like this is the best level on the chart, and we've had like the worst close at that level that my system at least can come up with. Not just like a close below or a close at resistance, but an actual failed breakout. It just has a lot of repair work to do until it stops looking like a piece of shit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing is, like if we pull in like a really massive candle next month, I mean that's fine, right?
Yeah.
But I mean it doesn't really feel that way. One, and there's several reasons for that, right? One, you actually have this narrative where you have like Sailor and all these Bitcoin bulls, right? That are talking about Bitcoin being, or like talking about this value that the market has, right? They're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin is valuable because of these and these reasons, right? And all of the reasons that they're talking about are not true for most of these altcoins, right?
Yeah.
And so you have this narrative going, and I mean that narrative is pushing price up. That's what is making Bitcoin rally, in my opinion. That you actually have like this bullish narrative where some very rich people actually kind of see the narrative and push the narrative. And you don't have that for the altcoins, right? So for me, that is one situation where I really, really have to think about actually getting long altcoins. Because I mean, if you have everything going for in favor for Bitcoin, right? There's a good chance that the altcoins are just not going to be able to keep up with Bitcoin. And I mean, if you've traded the market for a longer time, during like the 17 rally, for example, it's really, really hard to kind of keep pace with, for altcoins, it's really hard to keep pace with Bitcoin when it really goes on a tear, right? And if Bitcoin is pulling a top here, I mean, if you just think back what happened during this sell-off, right? This massive sell-off. I mean, I'm not expecting it to repeat, but if you think about what happened to the altcoins in February and March, even on the Bitcoin pairs, right? I mean, excluding ETH, they really didn't do too well. I mean, most of them dumped, if not just stayed sideways. So, like, in that situation where if Bitcoin goes parabolic, you're going to lose money being in an altcoin relative to Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin dumps, you're going to lose USD value, right? So it's better in most cases to be in Bitcoin because in that case, you're not losing whatever happens. And I think a lot of people are realizing that right now. And that's why we're having these ugly altcoin charts, which obviously then goes in the opposite direction where everyone sells their altcoins and gets absolutely panicked. And then they overcorrect. And then there's actually a play there. But I don't think we're quite there yet. So you have the situation where the ETH monthly chart looks really bad. And then you have the narrative that just fits for it to put in a pullback. And I wouldn't want to counter trade that. Like ETH USD for me, this looks as bearish as it can. And as long as that's not fixed, I am not interested in ETH.
How
on the
strong
long
can
side.
your bullish interest in Bitcoin be if ETH looks like this?
I mean, that's a good point. But the crazy part is, right, Bitcoin, look at the monthly chart, right? There's this tiny wick on the Bitcoin monthly chart. It's nothing. And then you look at the ETH monthly chart, and you see that we're actually down, like already from the high that was set. You're already down 20%.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is literally down 3% from the top, right? And I mean, you can see that obviously by looking at the ETH BTC pair, where you've just had aggressive selling going on during the Bitcoin rally, right? So, I mean, maybe Bitcoin just goes sideways and the altcoins just keep on dumping. But yeah, I agree with you that like having ETH look like this should put at least a little bit of a lid on too much Bitcoin bullishness, in my opinion.
Or if you're completely like neutral, you're like, okay, well, both markets are at monthly resistance, and the one that was leading has already failed to break out of it and put in a bearish candle, so maybe I should kind of chill out. But the issue is, like, I don't think there's an easy trade necessarily to be taken near 14K, at the very least not early on, right? Because if in the absence, like, look, if you look at 10.7, I'm just going to click off your screenshot for a sec. Like, if you look at 10.7, like, trading the 10.7 retest in hindsight, like maybe the guys who join in 2021 and shit, they're going to be like, oh, this was like the easiest trade ever, support turn resistance, right? But then you remember what it was like in the moment. That was not necessarily an easy trade to take. There was like weekly resistance, and again, just looking at the extremes, the range that price put in during the course of that bullish retest, it went as high as 12.5 and as low as 9.8. So after the first bullish close at the level, you had like 2 months of price action and like a, over $2,000 range before you actually get your high time frame move. That's not that easy, no matter how good you are at high time frames, high conviction, etc. Certainly if you're trading lower time frames and there's like a DeFi trend in the middle of it all, it's really easy to lose perspective. But at the very least, right, at least looking at it in hindsight, you had monthly closes to work with and they didn't lie to you, right? Now that we're at the other level, you had like 3 closes at 10.7 monthly to kind of inform you of direction. The issue is the 14K level now is you'll have like maybe 1 monthly close arguably at the level when this candle closes, but it's totally reasonable for price to spend like 1 or maybe 2 further candles at this level before you get any kind of really good information, right? And we see that even in cases when you get a bullish breakout at the level, like we did 10.7, like, oh, well, it's clearly above the level, it can then come back and retest it deeply, and then even if you're right on direction, right, let's say I just draw like a close above 14K, and you're like, okay, well, the market's bullish because we closed above, so my directional bias is bullish, and you basically start buying the close, okay, and then the market comes back and actually retests the level quite deeply, as it did at 10.7. And there's a good chance that you, who's buying the breakout, eats a plate of shit on the deep retest, even if you ultimately end up being correct, which is a very uncomfortable thing to contend with. That you can be right on direction and get the correct read from the high time frames, but like not be able to make any money or like lose your leverage positions, whatever. But that's what makes me think that there won't necessarily be an easy trade in the short term at 14K, because let's say we start trading above it, right? The kind of breakout scenario. I'm gonna find it hard to concede that there's no chance that you're putting in the high time frame wick with price being above the level, right? Like you can buy the breakout of 14K and then maybe puke if it starts looking really bad, but I don't think that's an easy trade, right? In the same way, if you start selling above 14K thinking, okay, this is the high time frame wick, this is it, this is the scam, and then it just fucking goes to all-time high, you feel like a total idiot. And the only way that you get an easier trade at 14K is if we spend more time there, like we did at 10.7. Like the easier trades at high time frame levels usually come later, which is why if we start flying through 14K like soon, I think my bias will certainly be towards shorter term trading and not gonna try to be a hero. I don't know if you agree with any of that, or maybe to the audience if any of that made sense at all.
I mean, I agree just based on the fact that you can't really trade the high time frames anymore if you don't have any resistances left, right? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you can't really trade any horizontals the moment we start trading above 14K. The only thing that you can trade is that like yourself expecting it to kind of just go back down again. And I mean, what you could do, but then again, that could also be the monthly wick, is that you just wait for it to break out. And like if you want to short, right? Yeah. You wait for the breakout and then you wait for it to just collapse below 14K again. Yeah. And then you start shorting. Could be the wick, could be the breakdown start. It's not really easy for me. That's why I'm saying, like, for me, the easy trade seems to be, and I mean, that's the crazy part. Like, I've been shorting ETH, like, I've been mainly like shorting ETH for like at least a week now, if not longer. And even when Bitcoin went up, I was very comfortable in those positions, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, the easy trade has been ETH, just based on the fact that when Bitcoin dumped, ETH/USD dumped. When Bitcoin pumped, ETH/USD didn't go up. And when Bitcoin just went sideways, ETH/USD managed to find a way to actually dump as well.
You make it sound like trading altcoin Bitcoin pairs during Bitcoin volatility recently. It's like Bitcoin goes up, your instrument's dead, down, dead, sideways, no one cares.
Yeah, I mean that's been the story for ETH, right? So, and my theory for why this is actually all happening for ETH, like at least the recent kind of movements, is that we had a lot of people that missed out on the Bitcoin rally, mm-hmm. right? Once you get long Bitcoin, didn't get any kind of good setup, And what most people do in this space, and it's, for me, one of the worst things that you can actually do in trading, but especially in the crypto space, is that they see Bitcoin take off, and then they're like, holy shit, I didn't get long, but I still have a chance to get long ETH because ETH hasn't moved.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, what you're doing is you're longing the weaker pair, and you're completely at the mercy of the market, because, I mean, there's a good chance that ETH BTC just counteracts every bullish move Bitcoin makes, and then you're basically stuck in the
worst trade available,
position.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you're in the coin that is actually used by like smarter people than you to actually hedge off their Bitcoin positions, right? So you're actually longing something that people are very happy to kind of sell into your longs, yeah, I don't know if that's going to continue going like that, just because like in the last week or two, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter actually start talking about it. But like counter trading a feed that you've made yourself, right?
Yeah.
Where you follow like decent traders, and then you're like, haha, everyone is catching on to my thing. I'm just going to counter trade them. The bad part is you actually chose those people, right? And if they're actually any good, and I mean, they should be because you chose them, you're going to get wrecked. Because if you have a bunch of good people actually on the same side of a trade, for good reasons, like if the trade actually makes sense, then you might get wrecked.
Maybe
so
that's something
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to play out. For me, ETH BTC is at support, so I'm not going to take that trade until we actually have the monthly close. But yeah, for me, the easy trade's been ETH, and I think that's going to continue staying that way, just based on the fact that ETH is at huge monthly resistance. So it's probably going to, like, if it's closing below, it's probably going to give like good short setups for the month to come.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. Certainly with like, I agree totally in terms of like the lagging pair. I've got a very speculative theory as to where that comes from. First of all, again, I agree with your conclusions. I even tweeted out like a short clip saying, does it make sense to play ETH as the catch-up trade because Bitcoin's mooning? And I basically argued no, because ETH looks like shit. And you know that aged nicely, whatever, clout collect, clap, social media dopamine. But like the argument was fairly straightforward, and certainly if it's like a narrative rebalancing as well as a price rebalancing at the same time, right? Like the whole everyone's underexposed to Bitcoin, and like DeFi is deflating, and YFI looks shit, and everyone hates Andre, and like if there's such a reallocation, both in terms of price but also narrative from Ethereum to Bitcoin. And crypto has a tendency for the leading pair to also just dictate where the market goes overall, right? So it kind of just drags the other one up. It's not like one goes up, the other one does nothing, and then when the one that was leading kind of chills out, the other one then catches up. That's usually not how it works, right? At least it hasn't worked like that recently. Instead, you have like one pair which leads, and it will keep leading until it tops out. And where the other one ends up, that's where it ends up, right? There's no guarantee of any type of catch-up. My kind of tentative, theoretical, whatever bullshit made up reason for why people think in those terms. I mean, I agree part of it is to do with like FOMO, convenience, like, oh, clearly the market's bullish because Bitcoin's gone up. ETH is kind of like Bitcoin, so ETH is going to go up, fine, I get that. But I also think it's got to do with shitcoins. And not shitcoins in terms of trading them, but because you remember in like 2017, 2018, you would draw these like absolutely, not draw, you would chart these awful looking like bottomed out, no volume looking altcoins. When everyone else's altcoins were pumping, you would tweet something like this. I've just drawn like a shitty straight line wavy chart. And you tweet, would you buy this? Right? And then because it was alt season, everything would pump. And it was just a matter of buying the thing which hasn't pumped yet, and you'll just be rewarded a bit later as the profits cycle from one shitcoin to the other. So maybe there's like a Stockholm Syndrome, primed mindset, whatever type of thing going on, where you're just so used to playing catch-up stuff in crypto, or you've got some sort of preponderance to do so, or tendency to do so, based on how altcoins used to trade, that you think that there's a guarantee that if one thing goes, the rest kind of follow. Although it's not been true recently. I don't know if you give that any credibility, but for me, it always reminds me of those altcoin cycles where you would be holding down the bottomed out, no volume shitcoin bag, thinking, okay, everything's pumping, but I'm next because that's how the market works.
Yeah, I mean that's how it worked. I agree. I could see that. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure how many people actually from that era are still around. I'd say it's kind of surprising how many people from actually 2018 are around these days.
Yeah.
Like, there's always the funny part when I click through Twitter nowadays, and then I see like tweets from people, and then I click on like message history, and I see what I've written with them in like 17, 18.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit! Like everyone's an expert now, but back then, holy,
Oh, for sure.
yeah. So I don't know if there's. I mean, I think like a lot of the shorting nowadays is based on the fact that we've just been in a long bear market. So you kind of have, because that's the weird part about like crypto in general right now, where you have a shitload of short interest while
number go up.
Well number go up, right? And every time it goes up, people start longing, and every time it goes down, people start shorting, and it's so weird to me. Because
buy
the
rips, buy the whatever, the opposite version of what I'm trying to say. Buy the rips, sell the dip or something. I don't know.
I mean, that's basically it, yeah. And I mean, that kind of stuff can work, right? But right now in this kind of market, what happens is you short the top, right, as a normal person should, and then you see it dump, and then everyone gets on board on that dump, and you're like, fuck. Yeah. If I don't close out, they are all gonna go wrecked, and then I'm gonna be the next one. And that's kind of how price action has been this entire way up, where you're shorting the top, and then you see it go down, and then you see a bunch of people start shorting into the dip, and then it squeezes those out. That squeezes price up into the people that actually sold the top, and then they're like the idiots because then they're stuck in that position where they have to close out, and then it rips higher, right?
Well,
and
there are no smart bears in an uptrend, as the saying goes.
Yeah, I guess we've just been conditioned to kind of risk manage whatever. Totally. You see a dip and you risk manage it. But yeah, it's been frustrating to, like, for me, for example, like at 10K, I was like, I want to be bearish here, but I can't. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Like when you have a shitload of people get bearish and supported, like that's how Bitcoin goes, right? Yeah. When you have a shitload of people bearish and support, it goes up. And you have a shitload of people bullish at resistance, it sometimes rips and sometimes dips. So I mean, you're better. Like I think longing the rip is probably better in crypto than actually shorting the dip, because shorting the dip, at least in recent times, been a pretty shitty strategy.
Yeah. I think it also depends, like the conditioning thing, when you joined the market. Like a lot of the traders now are just used to chop and weren't around for like any 2017 and where you'd have like slightly more prolonged trends, maybe in other markets as well, right? You're just so used to like, okay, here's my daily range. Anything that makes a higher high is a deviation, failed breakout piece of shit that I sell. Anything that makes a lower low is like a, bullish spring, whatever, failed breakdown pattern. And you're just like eternally stuck moving sideways. So I think a lot of that informed the early portion of the breakout, where you just have like the chart looks super bearish on low time frames, like, oh, SFP shooting star into resistance type of thing, and then you just get nuked. And then you'd have the same thing, oh, shooting star, SFP, whatever type of pattern, it just gets nuked up again, right? Like bid up. I've always said that like technical analysis works best, surprise, surprise, when you're on the right side of a trend. Because then, like, every support resistance flip works, support works, like shorting support, you get like an instant reaction from people offside. All the flags and consolidations break out when you expect them to, etc. But if you're still applying the assumptions of the technical analysis that you do in a range won't apply as cleanly in a trend, right? Like when it overshoots, you're like, oh, this is bearish because like this is going to be the high time frame wick. But if you're trending up, like, no, that's a breakout that you're buying. I still think I've got an article on this, which is old, but still really good in my humble view, which is like directional bias something for trading. It's on Medium. And the whole point there is if you trade any sort of lower time frame or swings or whatever you do, it's helpful to have an informed perspective with regard to like high time frame bias or just directional bias within the trend you're trading generally. Because that's when TA really starts to work, when you're on the right side of what's moving. I mean, at that point, anything works, right? All the breakouts hold, all the flags hold, all the supports hold. But it's really that kind of environment that you want to be putting your bets on, and not the shitty one that precedes it or comes in between, like in my view anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why you can start making the bold kind of plays, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people have seen these heroes that put in like, they have like a 500 account and they run it up to 1 million, right? I mean, that's kind of the crypto way, like from rags to riches, happened like several times during like different kind of parts of these rallies. And then the thing is, like all these people, like every time I see that, the thing that kind of breaks the neck every time is just a trend shift, right? Because what you do to make these kind of crazy run-ups, right? You take,
and you're no stranger
risks.
to those, are you? Because
I mean, whenever I see like conditions where that kind of run-up is possible, I just try my luck from time to time.
Yeah.
But you gotta know that like you have to stop basically before you start failing, because if you trade like that, you're gonna go like it's gonna go to zero at some point, right? So what you gotta do is like you identify like a trend early, for example, and then you play it really, really aggressively. And the first sign of exhaustion is where you get out and then just stop playing like that. But my point is, what always breaks people's necks is just the trend shift, because then the entire strategy that they've been using to run it up just stops working, right? And most people can't deal with that. And that's, I think, the same thing with like changing from sideways into like a trending up market, is that people just can't deal with that kind of shift, and all the strategies that they've been working on just stop working. So when you have a strategy in trading and it stops working and you don't know why, that's often the case that you've just kind of misunderstood where the market is actually going. Because
dude, I've heard that from every single good trader I've ever spoken to, right? Literally, it's like if you have like especially a lower time frame edge on direction, or just lower time frame setup that you trade and you've been trading them consistently, and then they just stop working, maybe 9 times out of 10, pulling numbers out of my ass, it's like a shift in higher time frame conditions or like a trend forming moment. Like I've yet to find a single person that disagrees with that. Doesn't mean it's right, but like from anecdotal experience and all the guys we've spoken to, that seems to be almost consensus as far as you can have it in trading. Jules, I know, is really strong on that. Another thing he says, which I really agree with, is that with regard to like stop hunting, or just, I guess, when price pokes through highs and lows, making it uncomfortable to stay positioned before a continuation, that tends to happen in sideways environments a lot. But in trending environments, you get really clean trends when breakouts just hold. There's no fuckery or nasty stuff, right?
Yep.
So that should also inform when and also how you want to get positioned. So if you know you're like between legs in a high time frame trend, you can afford to really milk out those setups, and maybe even buy the breakout, or at the very least have like you're more justified in buying the breakout because you can have a tighter stop for that same setup, right? It kind of just makes sense. Whereas if you buy the breakout in a ranging environment, I mean, shit, that's you're basically betting on the shift in conditions right there and then, right? You're betting on pure reversal as opposed to continuation, which is always tough. But that's another thing to bear in mind, which observationally is really true. Like if you're constantly getting, hunted, wicked out, etc., in key points in market structure, it's like, well, maybe the conditions just aren't ripe for that type of trading. Whereas when you get these legs between high time frame levels, or like when a high time frame move is intact, it just tends to be really nice to trade. And if you're conditioned to like fade every breakout, breakdown, and like buy below every wick and do all that sort of stuff, there might be a bit of tough love when those easier trading periods come up.
Yeah, well said. Well said. There's also been a guy in chat promoting Hex. For the people that don't know what the fuck that is, it's a scam. If you put your money in that shit, you're gonna lose it all. So yeah,
that was fun.
Because I'm starting to get pissed off by that shit, because starting to get it's getting into the BitConnect stages where it's very obvious that it's gonna blow up soon. But the thing is, you're gonna sound and look like an idiot if you're saying that, and it keeps on going up like 5x, 10x, whatever. But the thing is, like, it's gonna go to zero eventually. So, yeah.
Yeah, but everything's gonna go to zero eventually. So why don't you just make money, have fun, stay poor? Anyway, Cornholio asks a really good question, and I say that it's not a very good question, and most of his stuff tends to be like edgy, borderline, provocative, sort of passive-aggressive, light commentary, whatever. But it's fun, I'll entertain it. It says, so Duck strategy is to short tops and never taking profit, awaiting the price to go back to entry, hoping to catch a generational entry.
No, that's not the strategy. I mean, that's what ends up happening.
Isn't it? I thought he was asking the question in good faith, not satirizing how you trade. Unbelievable.
I mean, that's what happens when you get the market wrong, right?
Feel free to screen share if you want to explain anything, by the way. So.
Yeah, but there's nothing I can explain there on the screen.
Anyway, or draw squigglies and stuff. Okay, I'll go back to mine for a second. Let me know if you want to share something.
Yeah, I will. So, I mean, it's not like, okay, short every top and then just hold it and pray that it breaks down. No, for me, for example, I mean, now I can actually screen share. Sorry. So, for example, right, if you look at what I did with Bitcoin, right, so I was short, like I was bearish Bitcoin based on this head and shoulders setting up, right, and then I shorted here, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure, like we haven't had a decent pullback this entire rally. I'm pretty sure it's gonna put that in right now, right, and it started breaking down. It was like, okay, looks good, right? I did some lower time frame trades in here, and then it just didn't break down, right? It just didn't do it. Like, it didn't do what I was expecting it to do. You saw these weird wicks, right? Later turns out MicroStrategy bought that entire dip, right? And I just saw some buying that I was uncomfortable with. So I started closing out, right? And I closed out this red candle pretty much. Saw the red candle. It's a pattern that I see all the time during like bottom formations where you have a strong breakdown, starts going sideways, and then creeps up and you get one new candle. And usually when that happens and it finds support there and there's some weird buying going on, that's the last chance that you get to get out, right? So I got out.
Funding was negative down there as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then you had funding and everything, like every kind of metric that you had. Spot was going up. Derivatives were getting really bearish. That's where the funding comes from. So I was getting out, right? Got out half there and saw this rally into a bearish retest. It broke down. It was like, okay, this is like the prime opportunity to get out entirely. And that was that, right? So took my trade. I wanted to get like anything below here pretty much. Saw that there was absorption going on and then got out, right? So I obviously don't hold until it just goes back to my entry all the time. I mean, sometimes you do it based on like if you think there's a breakdown coming or something. I think it's fine to do sometimes. Where you just, I mean, I'm not stopping out in profit every time, right? It's another thing that you could do wrong. But yeah, that was bullish buying going on. Bullish buying. there was big buying going on down here, right? So I closed it based on the evidence that I had, and also just looking at the monthly time frame. There's literally this bullish retest, right? So there was no kind of excuse for me to just stay in there, based on the fact that both my charts were starting to turn bullish. Like this looked just bullish, this bullish retest, and then you had this low time frame buying that back then I couldn't explain. Now, I mean, we all know, okay, MicroStrategy was buying, and then it went up. And in this case, I shorted this. It broke down, and it did pretty much the exact same thing, right? You see weird buying going on. You see it not break down where you think it should have broken down, and then I got out. And I mean, if you're trading against the trend, and I mean, this is a bullish trend, that's, I think, how you have to do it. You set a plan. My plan was pretty much, it's going to break down from here. So, I mean, this is the monthly level, so I'm going to short it. It's going to break down, retest this trend line, and then die from there, right? And I mean, it broke down lower than I thought it would have. And I think that's largely due to the fact that traditional markets started dumping really hard. But then it retested that trend line, started selling off, and then it didn't do what it was supposed to do, which is accelerate, actually. Like, take out
it's
lows.
making kind of higher lows on that time frame, right?
Yeah.
It's not rolling over at the moment.
I mean, that's a sign of a strong... There's something that we talked about earlier, Cred said earlier, with SFPs and that kind of stuff. But what a lot of people that have been trained by the ranging or bear market in generally are trained to do is they have like lows, right? You set lows, and then you have a move below and a break back above, and that's actually where you start longing, right? In these strong uptrends, you very rarely get these kind of moves where you take out the lows. What you instead get is you put in a wick, and then you put in a higher wick. I mean, this is even an equal low. And then you put in these wicks. They're all in the same area. Never take out these before. And it just keeps going up, right? You don't want to, like, in a bullish trend, what you don't want to start seeing is actually these SFPs, right? So if you have a bullish trend, and then you put in a low, and then you put in an SFP, whatever, it starts going back up. And then it puts in another SFP, even if it makes highs in between, right? You don't necessarily want to see that, because then you know, okay, there's at least like some people in the market that are actually trying to get out, and there's not enough strength in the market to actually hold the lows, right? And then you oftentimes get a breakdown afterwards. But what you do want to see, and I mean, it's always easier to say in hindsight, and I mean, I was bearishly biased on the wrong side.
Oh my God, you're bearish the whole way up, Donald. Stop tweeting.
I mean, I bought down here, right? Got out too early, and then you see these wicks. They never got taken out, and that's a sign of, okay, there's underlying strong pressure. Like, people are actually, larger people are actually FOMOing. Yeah, they're actually FOMOing in, right? And that's what we got this entire rally. And if we start seeing like SFPs here, where it starts taking out lows, right? Takes lows again. I mean, that's bearish. That's something where it actually changes the market structure. The one notable kind of difference, and excuse my chart for looking this ugly now, but the one notable difference is in here, right, where you take out the lows multiple times on the way down. In my opinion, this would have broken down quite aggressively if we didn't have this strong dip buyer in MicroStrategy that just bought the entire thing up. I think there's a good chance that this breakdown would have been like a 30-40% move down if that wasn't the case. But I mean, you can buy dips up, and then they don't give you that kind of deep pullback that you're looking for if you just spend enough money, right? And I think that's what they did. They just literally bought it all up. But I mean, you don't know, right? You can't really say in hindsight. Even in hindsight, you can't say. But for me, like, if you have strong selling going on, right? But if there's one party that can just buy it all up, I mean,
soak it up, yeah.
Go up. Yeah.
Do you disagree, or has that changed your perspective on? Because you used to argue. I mean, I argue as well, but something in your stream you mentioned last time is 30 to 40% pullbacks in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the cope on the way up, perhaps some bit from me as well, but just generally, some of the bearish arguments, good or bad, were predicated on this sort of mandatory trend pullback of 30-40% before reaching higher. And we haven't had one of those yet properly, right? Not like a full one, not in Bitcoin at least. Do you think we will? Do you think it makes sense for us to do so? Will you buy it if it happens? I mean, has your view changed at all on a macro kind of trend pullback like that?
No, I still think that's very possible in general. It's just coming from a different area, right? Could have gotten it here. We could easily get it from 16K, right? Yeah. We go to 16K, 40% pullback. I mean, that's just something that Bitcoin likes to do in general.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily stopped. I mean, 40% pullback would actually take it back into these lows, right? When it goes to 16K, if it goes to 16K. I don't think that's just like, a lot of people are like, okay, now that big players are buying in, we're just not going to get any dips anymore. It's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
But then again, like when you have that kind of situation playing in the market, I mean, for me at least, it's smart to just pick your battles, right? You have a bullish kind of, a lot of people with deep pockets have a bullish outlook on Bitcoin. So, I mean, if you want to be a bear, and I mean, it's been for me, that's how I've been playing it. If you want to be a bear in like a bull market, just look at other instruments, right? In crypto, you don't only have Bitcoin. So I've been shorting ETH, for example, just based on the fact that, I mean, Bitcoin's pretty hard to short if it just keeps on going up. And I mean, you could obviously
Friday, yeah.
You could obviously long it as well, right? You can long Bitcoin if everything aligns. For me, like this 10K level actually was a good here. This 10K level was actually
the newsletter
a decent long opportunity.
Bullishness.
Yeah, I mean the newsletter was bullish, right? I even took a long there, closed it way too early. But yeah, I mean, when you have everything aligned, in this case, for example, and you think this chart is bullish, which I think it is, I mean, you can either just long it if you want to, if you think that there's good enough money in it, or you can look at other instruments and just trade those, right? As a trader, you're not only limited to trading one side of the market, but you're also not limited to just trade one market. Right?
Unless you've got XBT in your Twitter profile, in which case, by law, you only have to trade Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, then obviously, and then you have to post your P&L.
Yes.
And your perfect bottom entry every time without putting in the size that you put in, because then it'd be too obvious.
You mentioned like other instruments. I'm just clicking off screen share for a moment.
Yeah.
ETH still looks like it's got work to do. Just bouncing off like a weekly level or whatever I've got right now, but generally the monthly outlook still needs to be kind of fixed. And as a result, I mean, a lot of ETH BTC is like approaching support. We talked about the meme, head and shoulders, or you did anyway, coming into an area of previous market structure. But YFI, like a lot of the DeFi stuff, both in terms of interest but also price, looks really rough. We talked about YFI. I've got the USD pair open right now. That may be approaching some sort of capitulation event sort of thing. It's bouncing decently right now. But I mean, generally, this thing doesn't look great. We had a daily close below the lowest close on the USD pair at 12,380. So unless like that gets reclaimed or something, this doesn't look too great. And I just don't know, like ETH BTC tumbling towards sport, ETH USD looking rough, and a lot of the blue chip DeFi stuff not looking too great. Do you have an outlook on that kind of cycle? Do you think it's done for now? Is it time for the builders to quietly take over before another speculative fervor? Or, you know, is there anything that will change your mind on that? I find with me, whenever I want to get into a trend, I don't, and then I kick myself for about 2 weeks being like, oh, there's such a good opportunity there. And then it usually tops out and I don't feel as bad. DeFi was no exception. I was like this close to just sinking a bunch of money into Uniswap and rugging with the boys. Then it just didn't feel right, and then I'd be in a bad spot now. Do you have a outlook on that kind of cycle we went through?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's... And I mean... People are going to hate me for saying this, right? But I think the DeFi stuff that we had, I mean, there's a good chance that was the old season that we're going to get, right? So my view on this entire altcoin landscape is that we're getting a shitload of altcoins, right? I mean, I don't know
I've got
the exact number.
Good, by the way.
Okay, yeah. I don't know the exact number, but I mean, there has to be like more than 10,000 coins now, right? So... you have 10,000 coins. If you get an old season or whatever that a lot of people are waiting for, right? And I mean, that depends obviously on your definition of old season. For me, it's like a general market uptick, like across all the markets in the crypto space. So you have pretty much every altcoin go up, right? And then up massively. That's pretty hard to do when you have 10,000 coins, right? It's just not going to happen for 10,000 coins. I mean, there's a difference between having 500, having 1,000, and then 10,000. And I mean, it's increasing by day, right? We're getting more coins and more coins and more coins. So the liquidity that you have kind of gets spread thin. And and every kind of coin has their own backholder, so it's pretty hard to kind of make them all pump at the same time, right? And the DeFi stuff was kind of just a new kid in town, right? You have a new cool thing that sounds really interesting. The future of finance, whatever. I mean, that just sounds really, really interesting. And then you get new coins, right? No backholders, no nothing, and then that just starts a massive rally, right? And that's kind of what we had. It's akin to an old season, and I think this kind of pullback is kind of the bubble pop after it, and I would treat it as such. So for me, the bubbles pop for these, and unless they kind of reclaim. And the bad thing about all of this is that there's a good chance that we get reclaims and they still die, right? So, I mean, that's something that you have to live with as a trader in general. Like, let's say Wi-Fi kind of reclaims the support, you start longing with a stop loss below here, it's good chance it just keeps on rolling over, right?
That's the worst, right? We've seen something similar. We've seen this behavior with altcoin Bitcoin pairs, and that's really when, you know, the market's in shit condition, when you get, as a result of whatever liquidity or volume there is, some sort of decent high time frame technical setup, but it just doesn't go anywhere, right? The market gets stuck, there's no interest, the breakout, whatever, the shift in structure isn't interesting enough for anyone to get involved. It's kind of over it. Like, that rally is used as a godsend to those who want to get out at higher prices, and it just gets stuffed, you know?
Yeah. And I think that there's a good chance that that happens. So what I would say in general for DeFi stuff, but in general for these altcoins, right? Don't look at them in isolation. Don't look at Wi-Fi or Link or any of this stuff.
XTZ recently has been getting some attention.
Yeah.
Link's big brother, right? Or little brother. That went well.
Yeah, that one's pretty shitty. Holy moly. Yeah, but don't look at them in isolation, because if, let's say, you get a bullish setup in this, right, in Wi-Fi, and you look at across all the other altcoins and you're seeing all these bearish retests, or like in general bearishness across the market, I'd be a little bit careful in playing the bullish setups. But then again, like, if you see a certain sector do really well, like DeFi did, and I was certainly late to that party, don't be afraid to jump in to that sector, and don't waste your time in jumping into another one. Because what I saw a lot of people do, and I mean, that just hurt to see, was they saw DeFi take off and they're like, okay, this is old season, because I mean, these kind of gains you only get during old season. And then they jumped into all these legacy coins. And I mean, when I click through this, right, you see that, I mean, this is one of the better looking ones. You see the rectage, right? Like, people jumped into this expecting massive gains.
Oh, Lisk, I haven't heard that name in a minute, mate.
Yeah, it's been a while. So they jumped into these, right, expecting these kind of gains to kind of go over from DeFi into all of these other coins, right? And what you're now seeing is them getting dumped on, right?
Well, right?
Yeah, I mean, even the good ones among them, right?
But
even
this
the
speaks
good
to
ones,
our point, doesn't it? Of, if you're gonna play strength in the market, play what's actually strong, not what you think should be strong if your view on the market is correct, right? Like, if DeFi, new coins, etc. are strong, then play DeFi, new coins, and develop a... Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
This is absurd, man.
Yeah, that's the credit card Crypto.com, who's obviously never going to sponsor us after my reaction there. Yeah, that's fun. Can you imagine? Listen, this is Casual Friday off topic. Can you imagine being sponsored by like a coin or something, or a project, and like you're just like going through the charts and it's nuked like it looks like it's like, yeah, oversold, support somewhere. I don't know. That wouldn't be too fun.
I mean, I'm sure you have gotten those offers as well. I can't be the only one.
Yeah. Of course.
So for me, like, I've gotten a lot of offers actually from coins to put out bullish TA, which is like the one thing I'm never gonna do.
Yeah.
Because I just, like, that's just dirty.
Because you're a perma bear, bro. That's why.
Yeah, but no, it's just like there's some things, and I mean, the worst part is when you see other people put stuff out about those that kind of approached you.
Oh yeah,
and then you can't start Twitter drama, because if you start it, you just never get rid of it.
You attract it, yeah.
So yeah, I don't really want to do that kind of shit in general.
Sure.
But yeah, there's good offers there. Yeah, back in the day when altcoins were still bullish.
Oh,
I
mate,
mean,
some of these names that people wouldn't like recognize now were getting offered like 2 to 4 BTC for like a video on a channel with like 5 to like less than 10k subs. You know,
yeah,
like it's some of the it's absolutely. Oh, review our
mental.
platform. We've got like 20 ETH for you. It's like okay.
I mean, like if I calculate it all up, right? There would have been easily 7-figure money in
Yeah.
just shilling random shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that is one thing that I think rarely gets talked about when like people start shit talking like people on Twitter for putting out like bad content or whatever, like what people perceive as bad content.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta realize like all these accounts with like 50, 60, 70, 80k followers plus that don't put out this kind of sponsored content by like random coins or in general, that kind of stuff. They're kind of denying good, like for most people anyway, good money, right?
Sure.
So gotta give credit where credit is due. I think because there's a lot of people that just flat out refuse everything, and I think in our circle that's pretty much the case.
Thanks, Bybit, for sponsoring Technical Roundup.
But
It's okay.
yeah,
this time it's different, bro. This time it's different.
This time it's different, yeah. No, but you get the point, right?
Yeah,
when you just absolutely sell out for like putting out bullish TA, whatever, all that kind of stuff, like no one talks about, obviously.
Sure. But a lot of those guys were getting paid in the native shitcoin as well, which was like kind of mental in both ways, right? Because in that environment, a lot of stuff would just pump mentally. So you'd get paid like whatever, a few grand or whatever it was, whatever the rate was, by that shitcoin to review their project. And then by the time you put out the video, if you didn't dump it immediately, you're like up an extra 20, 30%, which is just fucking mental. But also a lot of the time towards the end, it started getting really illiquid. So you'd get paid in this shitcoin or like get some sort of allocation, and then they wouldn't even be listed anywhere, so you couldn't get rid of it. Dude, at some point, maybe like in a year or so, when things are slightly less, I don't know, relatable, we need to do like a fireside chat, bring on like Loom and some of the other boys from, you know, who were around when the stuff was at its craziest in terms of retail level, and just tell some stories. Tell some stories about the newsletters, these groups, these deals, the Udemy, ICO, YouTube, McAfee Coin of the Week.
People underestimate it.
Yeah, like, dude, there's
crazy.
some stuff which is just, I don't know, maybe. And then suddenly, like, we get, like, abducted, put into a van or something.
I wouldn't or get sued by anyone.
Like, yeah, because it's like burning bridges in a lot of cases, unfortunately, you know? So you just got to be careful, I guess.
I mean, for me, anyone that kind of did or does that kind of shit is generally not a bridge that I want to have.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
if we're on this topic, dude, giveaways. What the fuck is up with all of that? Back in my day, like on a serious note, like back in the day, giveaways were perceived as a really scammy way to basically get more followers, right? That's it. This is all it was. And no one would do giveaways. Like if you did a giveaway, even if there's like no strings attached or anything like that, like it would just be frowned upon as a way of engineering the platform, essentially. Whereas now it's like, you know, all roads lead to Rome. Whatever you want, just give away some stuff and good things happen. Look, my friend, like some people I respect, my friends do it as well, but I'm always like, I guess I can't really criticize the new meta. If you want to do that and everyone's doing it, then great. But I'm just not sure it helps them as much as they might think it does, right? Because that ends up being dead followers, bots, and other crap, and I'm not sure that like anyone wins in that case, aside from like the one person who actually wins the giveaway, I guess.
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of like a difficult topic to kind of not discuss, but like in general, it's not clear cut because it's like some people on Twitter or in general in the space. I mean, we're not all from Western countries, right? There's people from like Africa, from like in general poorer countries.
Right, should I mute your mic right now or after we get cancelled?
No, but there's actually like people where like a giveaway of like $100 or $200 makes a big difference, right?
Yes.
So it's really difficult to kind of hate on it because I mean, fair play if you do it, and I mean you get money to people that actually need it. I mean,
I can just
fair
think of
enough,
more effective
right?
ways of doing that, right?
Yeah,
Oh my
that's the
god,
thing, right?
multi-chain team, I can't believe I won.
And then you have the opposite side of it, where it just attracts the worst, right?
Yeah.
Like you start doing giveaways, and then you have a lot of people on Twitter or everywhere that just expect to get handouts from you all the time, and that can get exhausting real quick. And also it's like you're kind of buying influence in a sense, which I've never wanted to do. Like, it's just something that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's not clear cut where you say giveaways are bad or good.
Agree.
I think there's just good sides and bad sides to it. And
hey, if that's how things are done now, then that's how things are now, I guess, right?
yeah.
Fucking ranting like old men at this point, right?
I mean, that's kind of akin to your profile picture, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Brendan says it's like inverse prostitution, right? I guess. Also,
I mean,
CryptoFlux was saying that we're bad people for not responding to his questions about an end of year target. And the reason I generally don't respond to end of year target stuff is because I don't have a bloody clue, right? I don't have
let me do one. I want to do end of year target.
Okay, I've got your screen share. Let's go.
Oh shit! I haven't actually looked at this chart. Are we topping out right now?
Yearly resistance and back to yearly support.
What the fuck's this? This is a scam. We're taking out the yearly wick if we go above 13.9. Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a pretty good area to end.
Here we
the
go.
year
Yearly
on.
time frame bear. So we're gonna trade the yearly close.
No. I'm not saying it's going down. I'm actually saying, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it just chilled at 14K until end of year, just based on the fact that it then would close at resistance, and then we could actually get. No, but I'm just kidding. But I could see it.
Target 1, 8K. Target 2, Michael Saylor, Dukes, all this Bitcoin. Target 3, micro strategy, whatever, bankrupt. That's a joke. Oh, don't draw that level, fuck's sake. You're such an awful human being. Yeah, my thing about high time frame targets is I don't have a fucking clue. But perhaps more presciently, my system isn't one that really projects into the future per se. It's not like I can use extensions or project moving averages or extend trend lines or didn't do any of that type of stuff. My system explicitly relies on past structure or structure that's forming around previously important levels to give me some sort of context. And when I'm in trades, 99% of the time, that's a made-up number, but most of the time, I'm trading from one structure to the next. And anything that happens in between, whatever, that's where trade management comes in, but it's A to B, B to A, etc. In terms of my gut, I guess, which is what you're asking there, I think we get some sort of high time frame overextension into 14K plus. Just like 10.7 was violated to the downside further than people thought reasonable, which was 9.7, 9.8. I think it's likely that we get something similar to the upside. So, 14K resistance, and it goes uncomfortably high to the point where you don't think it's resistance anymore. And then that would probably be my candidate for some sort of high time frame pullback rather than going straight to all-time high should that happen. But again, my views are very loosely held. If something changes, I guess my view changes as well. What I wouldn't want to happen, it would just suck. It would make trading really unpleasant for me in the short term, at least, is if we just completely start rolling over now, having left these yearly highs just as they are, cleanly untouched on the chart. That would kind of fuck with me, to be honest. That's as long as we don't get that, I'm slightly more happy.
I mean, I wouldn't mind it on the reason that, I mean, you would know that, let's say this broke down, right here, right now. It started rolling over, it breaks down, puts in massive retrace, right? The next time it gets above 13K, it's almost a brain dead long. And I mean, I've done this in the past where I know exactly where price is going to go. And you know exactly that everyone else in the market knows it too. And it's just a run for liquidity. How much can you get before it gets to that price target? And I don't mind that, when you have these obvious targets. But then again, it's hard to play the downside when you have them left open.
Yeah, exactly, right? You keep your target. How far down can you go before it kind of magnets up to that level. That's what's always tough for me. Like, I think it was in the 7K range, like the 6 to 8K, whatever, that ugly looking consolidation on the weekly. I'm just going to quickly put it on my chart. Like, within here, I think, like the price action, when we were retesting this structure from the underside, I've just drawn the November to December range of whatever, last year, or this year. Wait, no, last year. Yes, last year. Jesus. Yes, November now, right? Yeah, so within that, I was trading the consolidation, and price was, like, if you have a range, right, and it was testing all three boundaries, or it tested 2 out of the 3 boundaries really nicely, so it was doing a lot of nice business towards the range low. The midpoint was being, like, traded at amazingly, a ton of volume going on, etc., but in the range high, it just wasn't tested. And so I was like, oh, I still want to be scalping long or generally long bias until we test this structure, simply because of how active price was within that pocket, or within that consolidation. And then when we broke down and broke back into the range, I got long, but then I took profit at the mid-range thinking that's first trouble area. And then, of course, price literally teleports to the target that I've been trying to scalp to, like within a couple of candles, or in a very fast-moving, easy move. So that's really tough. I mean, I got off lucky because I was on the right side, but I took size off early. But if you're on the wrong side of that, and you sell, for example, the breakdown of a range and basically get squeezed until it tests the other side, that's really tough. And it's something that factors into my trading. Certainly if I'm close to areas which I think are significant or are going to get tested. If they're not tested, I always, in the back of my mind, have like some sort of reversion idea ready to think that, okay, I just need some sort of evidence that we're going to go higher because there's a nice level above, or lower that we're going to go below. But if that kind of stays there untouched, it's hard to get strong views that deviate away from that or take us far away from those types of levels. And for 14K, that's sort of what I've got, I guess. But look, you've got that red box on the daily time frame, that green box around 13K as support. I've also got a level there on the daily time frame at 12.9. If we lose that structure and make a lower low close, which doesn't turn into some amazing reclaim scenario, blah blah blah, like an actual breakdown at 13K, I'm pretty much going to have to assume that we'll come back and test this later at some point, and that we've got some sort of high in, and then play a pullback towards kind of 12, 11.9. So yeah, I'm just kind of shooting the shit right now. The first real daily candle is getting squeezed back up. I really want to. I think monthly level is more likely to get violated with some more piercing and significant price action, not just tap the level and then that's it. The market tops. But I'm gonna have to start shifting my view if we get a breakdown from 12.9, because at that point I think there's a good chance we fill in a lot of that breakaway candle, which basically took us from 12 to 13 in one day.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well said, actually. I think the thing is, if we start losing that box, for me, I mean, it's the same pretty much. Then we actually start putting in those lower lows, right? We violate the kind of weird uptrend that we've been having. And the thing that I talked about earlier is this, right? So this is something that I like to, and someone on the last video commented on me drawing trend lines wrong. Because I did this on like an altcoin chart. There's not a trend line where you're like, okay, I'm gonna like sell the trend line or whatever, like something like this is. It's more for me to kind of see, okay, where is price action taking me, and what's the speed, and what's kind of in general the direction of it, right? So sometimes, and this is something very useful, I think, in general for the altcoins as well, is you just want to know, is this accelerating in one direction? Is this decelerating in one direction? What is happening, right? So for example, in this case, let's say this price moves up here and keeps with this, I mean, I don't want to call it trend line because other people are going to get angry again, but with this line upwards, right?
Line, yeah.
Then there's a good chance that it starts squeezing, right? If it can hold that. The same is true if it starts rolling over from there, right? If you see it actually lose momentum to the upside after it's put in all this work. When you start seeing it kind of roll over, deviate from that line, then maybe it's time that it actually kind of breaks that low time frame. I mean, it's a daily thing, but this daily trend of gradually moving higher, right? And I mean, you can see this on lower time frames oftentimes too. Is something I watch out for like breakouts in general. When you have this kind of weird movement upwards and oftentimes when that happens, there's a squeeze at the end of it. And then you get a squeeze. And I mean, in this case, you get the same thing again, right? Starting to kind of walk itself upwards. And at the end of it, when it isn't managed, like if the bears can't make it break down, you actually get a squeeze out of it and then it accelerates. And then you get the parabola. So, I mean, in general, these uptrends, like whenever you see these squeezes, oftentimes it's just a slow walk upwards with like a steady kind of direction, and then you pop. And that's something I watch out for. And that's something I watch out in the altcoins as well, right? So, I mean, I've been talking about this for ages, and this is the one that made someone in the comments angry when I pointed it out. And I might not have explained it well enough. So you can look at this several ways, right? You can draw this trend line and trade this trend line, and I mean, that's completely fine, right? But you can also say, okay, Zcash is in general moving in that direction. And whenever it's starting to kind of deviate from that massively, and I mean, this is a macro chart, right? You might get like buying or selling opportunities. And in this case, it actually broke down pretty big. So, you know, okay, this is capitulation because the general trend is down still, but it's broken so far away from that trend that...
Yeah, it's like the mean, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much the mean. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And then it's the same thing up here where you have, I mean, this is trending downwards, so you shouldn't be too aggressively bullish, right? And then when you're looking for sells, where would you do it, right? When it starts moving away quite far from that kind of direction. Yeah. But I mean, maybe it's just something that helps me. I don't know if, I don't think I've seen someone else do this. Loomdot actually said it when I told him like that people were angry at me. He said he kind of compared this to just when you have like altcoins that are getting mined and getting dumped continuously, right? Then this is pretty much a horizontal, just factoring in that you get like more and more.
Dude, I remember I almost quit trading or quit trying to learn how to trade in like early mid 2017 when everything was going up, right? Especially like mid first like quarter two 2017, I think. Like everything was going up, but I was learning about horizontal levels of support and resistance. But there weren't any because everything was just going up in a straight line. You know, there's no base, there's no previous levels. It was like the worst environment in which to learn horizontal support resistance trading because there are no levels and everything goes straight up and there are no previous reference points. So that, I'm not saying it's one-to-one the same thing, but a lot of the time you kind of need to adjust your technical tools to the environment you're in because they might just not be that fit for purpose, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, in general, like what TA most of the time is, it's just a way for you to kind of interpret the market better. So, I mean, tools that I use, for example, might not make sense to you. And if they don't, I mean, you don't have to use them, right? Yeah. You can find your own that makes sense to you. Because if I look at this, right, I'm looking at this chart and let me just kind of hide this real quick. I look at this chart and it takes me like 10 seconds at most to understand what's going on, right? But if you're not used to this kind of way to splitting up the chart, to kind of making it obvious what you're looking for, or in general where the market is headed, then this might not help you, right? And then, I mean, for example, for Loomdot, I mean, he trades the diagonals, right? Mainly, this might not be all that helpful. And then he has like all these lines on his chart, and then I look at his chart and I'm like, okay, it's pretty hard for me to kind of make out where we are, what price is gonna do. And I think that's just in general, like that you have a view on how to kind of, I mean, in general, like charts are just showing what the market is doing in general.
They just give context, right? And if you learn context, like when price is relative to a moving average, or like a diagonal for momentum, horizontal for like based on previous prices, it's all kind of leading to the same thing. And it's what you do with that information that's important. And this also answers to some extent a question from Ozan, who says, what is wrong with trend lines and diagonals? I'd say nothing's wrong with trend lines and diagonals. At one point on crypto Twitter, it was like a cult thing where like a horizontal maximalist order block, whatever, rectangle stuff. And I was like accused of being part of that, despite really liking horizontals, certainly for context. I don't think anything is wrong with horizontals or diagonals. I think they're good for showing shifts in momentum and like a slowdown or acceleration in trend. But I also think they're really good technical structures just for trading as you would support and resistance. Just because I don't use them as my primary tool, for me personally, it's just like an eye test thing. They don't tend to jump out at me as clearly, but a lot of the time, if they do, I'll use them. So it's not some sort of there's no special reason that they don't feature primarily in my type of stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, it all depends on the person that is using it, right? And what I always say is, I mean, even if you put out the most ridiculous stuff, right? I've seen people put out like these weird GAN fans and whatever. I mean, for me, that's all bullshit, right? Doesn't make any sense. But if you can make it work, just do it. I mean, there's no reason, like if you can make money with something, there's no reason not to use it, right? And just because something doesn't make sense to me doesn't mean it doesn't have to make sense for you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a little bit like the extremism in that space is a little bit over the top. And I mean, we've had this discussion way back, if you remember, when we got to know each other, when we had this discussion with a very popular page group leader back then that said horizontals don't make any sense.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
And we're like, dude, like this is so stupid.
That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like everyone has their own view, and oftentimes it's like they try to impose the view that they have on you. And yeah, don't listen to it. If you can make it work, and if it works, right? If it doesn't work and you just try to make it work and it never works, then maybe the problem's with you. But otherwise, if you can make it work, make it work.
Agree. So, we've also been going for an hour 26. Should we let these people get along with their weekend? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's
would be the generous course of action.
Yeah, the nice thing to do.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we have to keep them hostage until they like the video, right? That's what Bybit told us in the last call. That's a joke. It's a joke. I know you hate this shit. Anyway, gentlemen, ladies, anything and everyone in between. We don't discriminate, of course. Not in public anyway. Thank you for being here with us. Hope you enjoyed Casual Friday and have productive and fulfilling weekends planned ahead. Make sure to like the video before leaving us. Otherwise, I get put into a cage. Thank you, speaking of cages and adverse, I'm joking. Thank you to Bybit for sponsoring Technical Roundup. Couldn't do it without them. Or at least we wouldn't want to do it without them, because then it's just free live streams 3 times a week, and done enough of that over enough years. But their support is very much appreciated, and their links can be found in the description below. Some new trading pairs, some other stuff going on, which you should definitely check out and show them some love. And that's all from us. You will see me on Monday for Monday Markets, newsletter on Tuesday, and then the Duck probably tired or something on Wednesday to talk to you.
Fuck off.
Don, thank you very much. Chat, take care, and we'll see you all later.
Bye-bye.